All right, so let's dive right into this.
Okay.
Today we're tackling disagreeing politely, especially at work.
That is a tough one.
Yeah, it can be super tricky,
Mhm.
almost like you said, verbal judo,
Yeah.
where you want to kind of navigate different viewpoints without anyone getting thrown off balance or feeling like they lost.
Right.
And you sent over some interesting material about that
Yeah.
that uses this fictional company,
hmm
Tip Top Trading,
hmm
and their new product. It's called the Imperial Lemon
hmm
to illustrate this. So I'm really curious to see what we can learn from this.
What I think is so fascinating about this approach is that it really highlights how easily things can go wrong
Hmm.
when people feel like their ideas are under attack. It's
Yeah.
like that just triggers defensiveness, and
Right.
and productive discussion just goes out the window.
Yeah, you can't get anything done
You can't get anything
if
done.
everyone's just trying to protect themselves.
Exactly. And so the key here is to disagree in a way that shows respect for everyone's perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. I've definitely been in those situations where things get really heated because someone feels like their ideas are being dismissed.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this fictional scenario with Tip Top Trading and their Imperial Lemon.
Sure.
Like, what kind of situation are we looking at here?
So the source material introduces us to Anna, who is a member of the Tip Top Trading team.
Okay.
She's got all these great ideas for marketing this new lemon product,
Okay.
but initially she stumbles when her colleagues disagree with her.
Okay.
So, for instance, when a colleague expresses concern that Anna's proposed discount strategy could lead to financial trouble for the company.
Oh, yeah, that's a big concern.
Yeah, right, like going bankrupt.
Right.
Her response is, no, that's not true. You're wrong.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
I can already see how that would put a damper on things.
Yeah.
It sounds like she's just shutting down the conversation rather than inviting further discussion.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that a much more effective approach is to start with phrases like, I'm not so sure about that.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
it acknowledges the other person's point, but it opens the door for you to then present your own perspective
Yeah.
without coming across as dismissive or confrontational.
Right.
You're not saying, no, you're wrong. You're just saying, like, oh, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's that subtle shift in language, I think,
Right.
that can really make a big difference.
It really does.
Instead of immediately contradicting the other person,
Yeah,
you're creating space for a more nuanced conversation.
exactly.
So it's less like, head to head and more like side by side,
Yeah.
kind of working together.
Yeah, it's really about finding a way to disagree without creating that sense of conflict or hostility.
Okay.
And the source material offers some really interesting examples of how Anna learns to do this more effectively as the scenario unfolds.
I'm all ears. Give me an example.
Okay, so in another instance, Anna's colleague is worried that offering a 20% discount on the lemons will make the company look desperate.
Okay. Yeah.
And instead of getting defensive, Anna replies with, I see your point, but if we frame it as an exclusive deal for loyal clients, they'll see it positively.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just that she avoids that blunt,
Yeah.
no.
Right.
She's actually reframing the entire issue.
Exactly.
Instead of it being about potential losses and looking desperate,
Mm-hmm.
she shifts the focus to potential gains, boosting sales, and fostering customer loyalty. That's pretty clever.
It is, and that I see your point. But technique, I think, is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Because it shows that you're not dismissing the other person's concerns,
Right.
but you're also not letting those worries just like completely derail the conversation.
It's like you acknowledge the bump in the road,
Yeah.
but then you just smoothly steer back towards your destination.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense. But it also makes me wonder,
Mhm.
is this always the best approach?
Mm.
Like, what if you're dealing with someone very senior or someone who is known to be very stubborn?
Right.
Does this bridge building still work in those situations?
It's a great question.
Or are there times when a different approach might be needed?
And it's something that the source material touches on as well.
Okay.
While this technique can be very effective in many situations, there are certainly times when a different approach might be required.
Okay.
For example, if you're dealing with someone who's particularly resistant to change,
Okay.
or someone who holds a position of authority,
Right.
it might be helpful to first focus on building rapport and establishing some common ground.
So instead of jumping right into the disagreement,
Yeah.
you're taking the time to connect with the person on a personal level.
Right.
Find areas of agreement, kind of build that foundation.
Exactly. It's about creating that foundation of trust and mutual respect
Okay.
before you then dive into those areas where you might have differing opinions.
So it's not just about the words you use, but it's also about that overall approach, how you set the stage for the conversation.
Precisely. And the source material emphasizes the importance of being mindful of your tone and body language as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because even if you're using polite phrases,
Yeah.
if you're, coming across as defensive or aggressive,
Right.
it can totally undermine your message.
Totally. And I know I've definitely been guilty of that myself.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Sometimes even when I'm trying to be polite,
Yeah.
my tone or my body language can betray my true feelings.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
But the good news is that with practice, we can become more aware of these subtle cues and learn to control them.
Okay.
So the source material offers some helpful tips in this regard,
Like what?
such as speaking slowly and clearly, making eye contact, and using open body language.
Okay.
These nonverbal signals can convey respect and create a more positive and collaborative atmosphere.
So it's like you're projecting an attitude of openness and willingness to listen, even when you're disagreeing with someone.
Exactly. And speaking of listening,
There we go.
that's another crucial element that's highlighted in the source material.
Okay.
It's not enough to simply present your own perspective. You also need to genuinely listen to and try to understand the other person's point of view.
Yeah. That reminds me of a situation I had a while back at work. My team was working on a new project, and I had a very specific vision for how I wanted things to go.
Okay.
But one of my colleagues had a completely different idea. And initially, I was so focused on my own perspective
Yeah.
that I wasn't really listening to what he had to say.
It's understandable when we feel really strongly about something.
Right.
It can be difficult to step back and consider other viewpoints.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually realized I was being too close-minded.
Yeah.
So I took a deep breath,
Okay.
and I really focused on listening to my colleague's perspectives.
Good for you.
And you know what? He actually made some really valid points.
What happened next? Did you end up changing your approach based on his feedback?
I did, and it was the best decision. Because by combining our ideas,
Yeah.
we actually came up with a much stronger solution than either of us had initially envisioned.
Uh-huh.
It was a real aha moment for me.
I love that that's a fantastic example of how active listening can lead to better outcomes, even in those situations where there's that initial disagreement.
It's about being open to learning from others
Yeah,
and recognizing that everyone brings a unique perspective to the table.
absolutely. And the source material makes a similar point.
Okay.
It emphasizes that disagreements shouldn't be seen as roadblocks,
Right.
but rather as opportunities for growth and innovation.
Yeah, when we approach disagreements with a mindset of curiosity and openness,
Yeah.
we can transform them into valuable learning experiences and potentially even come up with more creative and effective solutions.
Precisely. So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether,
Right.
but rather about learning to navigate it in a way that is both productive and respectful.
And the source material offers all these different techniques and strategies for doing just that.
Yeah.
From using specific phrases to kind of reframe the conversation, to focusing on building rapport and actively listening to the other person's perspective.
It's like a whole toolkit for turning potentially tense situations into opportunities for collaboration and growth.
It is.
Yeah.
But I'm curious how these techniques can be applied outside of the workplace.
Oh,
Because disagreements aren't limited to the office, are they?
absolutely not. These skills are just as valuable in our personal lives as they are in our professional lives.
I think even more so,
Yeah.
because those relationships matter more.
Yeah, the stakes can feel higher.
So let's delve into that a little bit.
Yeah.
How can these principles be applied in those contexts?
Okay, let's take a look at a common scenario. Okay, so let's say you and your family are planning a vacation,
Oh, yeah.
and everyone has different ideas about where to go and what to do.
Right. Always.
How can you apply these techniques to navigate that kind of situation?
Well, it sounds like it would be similar to what we were just talking about. Like at work, where you first acknowledge and validate everyone's perspective.
Exactly.
So instead of just like, no, we are not going to Disney World,
Right.
you could say something like, that sounds like a lot of fun, but I'm a little concerned about.
Yes, exactly. It's that I see your point, but technique again, just adapted for a family setting.
Right.
It's finding a way to express your own needs and preferences
Mm-hmm.
without making anyone feel like their ideas are being ignored or rejected.
Yeah. And what about when things start to get a little bit heated?
Oh.
Like when your teenager insists on spending the entire vacation glued to their phone and you're envisioning, quality family time, exploring a new city.
Right.
How do you handle that kind of clash?
Well, that's where those active listening skills that we were talking about really come into play.
Okay.
So instead of lecturing or getting into a power struggle,
Right.
Try to understand why your teenager feels so strongly about spending time on their phone. Maybe they're worried about missing out on social connections, or they're feeling anxious about being in a new environment.
So you're saying take the time to actually understand their perspective
Yeah,
before you jump in and tell them what to do.
exactly, because that can really help to de-escalate the situation
Yeah.
and open the door for a more constructive conversation.
So then you can start to explore potential compromises.
Right, maybe they can have designated phone time each day,
Uh-huh.
but the rest of the time is dedicated to family activities.
Right. Or maybe you can find ways to incorporate their interests into the vacation plans.
Yeah, find that common ground.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where everyone feels heard and respected, even if it means making some adjustments.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of these communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just about winning arguments or getting your own way.
Okay.
They're about building stronger relationships
Yeah.
and creating a more harmonious and understanding environment, whether it's at work, at home, or anywhere in between.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
Yeah, it's been great.
I feel like I've gained some really valuable tools
Yay.
for navigating these disagreements more effectively
Yeah.
in all areas of my life, not just at work.
I think the key takeaway here is that disagreements are a natural part of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we handle them that makes all the difference.
So true.
So by approaching these disagreements with respect, empathy, and a willingness to listen,
Yeah.
we can transform them from potential sources of conflict into opportunities for growth and connection.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks.
So the next time you find yourself facing a disagreement, just remember Anna and the Imperial Lemon.
There you go.
It's not about avoiding the sour spots, but rather about finding the sweetness in those moments where different perspectives collide.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.